This October, Metal Gear Solid 5 was made available as a free PlayStation Plus game, and seeing I was still a newbie to Metal Gear, I decided to see for myself why everybody was praising it. It's a really good game, and I've been loving it so far. Anyway, playing it made me really want to experience the complete saga, and while I'm completing side missions in Afghanistan, I decided to begin with the very first 3D entry, Metal Gear Solid for a PlayStation 1. Let's begin. Now, if you're watching this, I want you to do something. While watching this video, I want you to keep repeating to yourself, Metal Gear Solid is a game from 1998 on the PlayStation 1. Now that that's out of the way, let me tell you why I think Metal Gear Solid deserves to be held in such high consideration nowadays, why it's basically a timeless masterpiece, and why you should never play it. Yes, you heard that right, you should never play it. If you look at the highest rated games of the PS1, you'll obviously find Metal Gear Solid in between other titles such as Resident Evil, Final Fantasy 7, 8 or 9, Silent Hill, and go forth. All of these games obviously told a story, epic or scary, but none of them did it like Metal Gear Solid. It is the first video game that introduced something that we are so used to seeing in video games nowadays, and that is cinematic storytelling. Let's start talking about the game finally. First, some basic information. Metal Gear Solid is a stealth action game about Solid Snake infiltrating a terrorist base, where the top secret weapon, the Metal Gear Rex, was hidden. What seemed as a simple and straightforward mission at first, in the end, you'll leave the game shocked from what you've played. Plot twist, formidable characters, questionable motives, and most of all, lots and lots of quirkiness and meaning come from this story. I absolutely do not want to say anything about the story and themes, because if by chance you don't know anything about this 19-year-old game, going in blind is, for me, the best way to experience it. However, if you're interested in what I want to say, I'll still make sure to not spoil anything about the plot. So, Metal Gear is a pretty serious and very realistic game about modern warfare and political situations, something no game has done before it. Sure, others still had stuff like death and war, but they weren't exactly realistic. However, one key thing about Metal Gear is that, for how initially contradictory it may seem, it's not a video game about war, but an ode to life and to live it fully. It denounces the atrocities of war and, most importantly, the danger of nuclear holocaust. Kojima isn't afraid of calling out names and referring to the 1998 current political situation of tensions between two super countries like America, Russia, and the emerging Middle East countries. Speaking of Kojima, I can now see why he's one of the best game directors out there, as he really is one of the few that is a true director, both in games and movies. Even in the opening, you can clearly see Kojima's ability to move the camera as if it were real, with the whole cutscene being something you could see in a movie. And it just keeps getting better with every further iteration. Camera panning, close-ups, and clever shots were something never before seen in the industry. Even the choice to have no FMV videos, very popular at the time, was made to keep the feeling of being inside the movie the whole time, not only during cutscenes. The plot in Metal Gear Solid thickens the more you dive deeper. More characters get introduced, bosses get defeated, and you learn more about Snake's past, which in future games will get explained fully. Something that really amazed me was the amount of thought that went into this in making a very extensive background. This game was intended to be a standalone title, and a sequel wasn't put into consideration. Fortunately, history took a different turn, and future Metal Gear games, especially the ones involving Big Boss, were built on the foundations made by this first game. Probably the most important thing to creating a narrative in video games aren't the huge flashy set pieces or the over-the-top epic moments, but a diverse and well thought out cast of characters. Exploring their psychology and how they change throughout the course of the game is very important, and Metal Gear Solid does just that. Even the bosses have true motivations and are not just obstacles put there to make the game longer. With each and every boss fight, you'll have cutscenes and conversations that'll tell exactly why they chose to fight. Even the main antagonist of the game has different layers to him. Anyway, I'll now stop talking about the overall plot of the game. The codec is, in my opinion, one of the most fundamental and genius parts of the game. First of all, it's integrated very well into the game's structure, as you can call all your allies on it and they give you explanations on how to play the game without breaking immersion too much. It also serves as something to really dig your teeth into if you want to know more about the game. There are hundreds of unique dialogues based on who you call and in which point of the story you are. Like seriously, one moment you're talking about the disagreements between Russia and America, and the next you're asking Otacon how to disarm nuclear bombs. All stuff that could be completely missed if you're not pressing that codec button every 5 seconds. Another thing that really blew me away, and one of the reasons this saga became famous, is the major attention to detail. That in comparison to future Metal Gear games, this one was nothing. But still, for a PS1 game, it really was something. For example, every Metal Gear game has a theme that is hidden in the backbone of the story. Genes is the theme in this one, and you'll start to find out during the second half of the game. But many people don't even think about it. What really blew everyone's mind though was the realism of Metal Gear Solid. Sure, you can still hide in cardboard boxes from 20 yards, but that's just the quirky humor of Metal Gear. So up until now, I've only talked good about the game, right? I wish it was all like this. Now, the biggest problem I had is the gameplay, but not because it's awful. The problem lies in the time that it was made and the limitations of the PlayStation 1. First of all, one major issue is the camera, which is very zoomed in on Snake. It isn't fixed like Resident Evil, but you still couldn't control it. Second, controls were very rough and imprecise, so going stealthily is obligatory if you don't want to aim a gun using a D-pad. Which reminds me, the biggest gripe I had with not only this game, but all of the Metal Gear saga, is that the game doesn't explain you absolutely anything. I'm fine if this means that there are multiple and ingenious ways to use your items and the environment, which is the case here. But basic things like controls or what you can do are never explained in the game. Another problem I had with the game were the boss battles. Now, as I said earlier, the bosses were very good as they were treated as humans and not just a generic baddie. However, I don't know why the game has bosses in the first place, as they were placed due to every game usually having them, I think. I think that in a stealth game, where the primary objective is not being seen, having to fight against someone you can't hide against is a pretty contradictory idea. And another problem that surfaces here is again the controls, which aren't made to use weapons easily. Finally, we've arrived at the end of this retrospect. You know, now that I think about it, instead of calling this a review, it'll be another one of my How It All Began series. I didn't even plan it, it just came naturally. Which is the final thing I want to say about this game. When you first pick up Metal Gear Solid, it'll do many things. But the most important thing is that it will surprise you. Whether it's because you didn't think how complex of a story the saga has, or that you didn't even know it was a stealth game, this game will be an experience for you. I think that what really made this game stand out to me was that, despite coming from a different era of video games, its themes and story are more modern and revolutionary than anyone thought. That said, I think the Metal Gear saga just earned another fan today, and I hope you'll at least give some game a shot. See you in the next video.